Hey everyone, this is Matt Hendricks with the Sharpening Guy, and I'm going to show you how to use a honing rod to maintain the edge of your knife between sharpenings. Essentially, this will keep it sharp for longer so that you have to do a full resharpening less often. So I recommend that you use a really fine, smooth ceramic rod like this one. This one feels actually glassy to the touch if you run your hand over it, and that's what you want. Also, you could use what's called a smooth steel or a packing house steel, which is essentially a steel rod that's tempered and then polished completely smooth. That will work fine too. What I don't recommend you use is either a grooved steel rod, so it's a steel rod with the grooves in it that like the ones that come with a lot of knife blocks, or I also don't recommend that you use a diamond coated rod. Those just don't work very well either. But a glassy, smooth ceramic rod like this is my favorite. Now, what you're going to do is you're just going to use this to maintain your knife. This will not do a full resharpening, and your knife will get to a point where it needs to either go back and be sharpened, by you on Waterstones, or sharpened by somebody like me, with all the equipment in my shop. But this is a great thing to do while you're cooking or something, just to make sure that you have a sharp knife, or to bring the edge back on a knife that's just starting to get dull. That being said, if you have a Japanese kitchen knife, I have other videos showing you how to maintain a Japanese knife between sharpenings, and I recommend you watch those. But if you don't have a Japanese knife and you just have a normal kitchen knife or a hunting knife or something like that, this should work pretty well. So the first thing that's important to know is what angle you're going to use. So if we hold our knife at a 90 degrees to the rod like this, right, this creates a square corner. And if we take half of that, that's 45 degrees. Half of that is 22.5 degrees. Now, the biggest mistake you can make is using too high of an angle. If you do that, you're going to ruin your edge. So whatever you do, don't go above 22.5 degrees. A lot of knives you can use a lower angle, but definitely don't use a higher angle. Your goal is to actually use just a slightly higher angle than whatever the knife was sharpened at. So if you know exactly what angle the knife was sharpened at, then you can put that and just raise it slightly and you're good to go. If you don't know, then somewhere, in the 15-20 degree range will probably work pretty well for you. So anyway, once you find the right angle, hold the knife like this, and then lock your wrist at whatever angle it is that you're using. And then you're going to move from your shoulder so that your wrist isn't twisting like this, because if you hold your wrist like this and then you just move from your shoulder, you'll have a pretty easy time maintaining the right angle. So you're going to set the tip of the steel down on your cutting board and hold it like this. You're going to set your angle, and then if your knife was in good shape, say it was cutting really well, but you just want to preemptively maintain it, just to make sure that it stays sharp as long as possible, all you're going to do is very lightly take a handful of strokes on each side of the rod like this, alternating, and then you'll go right back to cutting, and your knife should still feel really sharp. Now that being said, if your knife is like this one, this knife right now has just started to feel dull. It's not super dull. It can cut paper a little bit, but it depends on the part of, like the back part is sharper, this section up here definitely isn't sharp. And so like I said, you've been using your knife in the kitchen and it's starting to not cut well. Then you need to use your steel a little bit differently. You're still going to use the same angle, but you're going to start off with more pressure. So maybe 4 to 6 pounds towards the rod, somewhere in that range. And so you're still going to alternate just like you did before, except you're using more pressure this time, because now that you know that your knife actually wasn't cutting well, it's going to take a little bit more to bring the edge back. And so you'll do this a handful of times like this. And as you go along, you'll probably find that your knife feels smoother again as you drag it down the rod, whereas at first it might have felt a little bit rough. And then after you've done that a few times, then you're going to go back and, just like you would have if your knife was already sharp, you're just going to take some really light strokes just to finish up. And the light strokes can either be at exactly the same angle or at just a slightly greater angle than you did the heavy strokes at. And you're just going to take a few of them like this. And then you're done. So if that worked well, you can go back to cutting and you should notice a substantial improvement in how your knife performs. Or if I test it again on paper here, or test up there, right, because that was a section that really didn't want to cut before, you can see the knife cuts just fine now. So that was a successful use of the honing rod. Now, if I had used the honing rod like that and the edge did not come back and it still did not feel good either on the paper, or it still didn't feel good when I was cutting things in the kitchen, then that's how I know it's time to either send the knife back in to me to get it resharpened, or to resharpen the knife again on Waterstones yourself and, go through the whole process of thinning and creating a new edge bevel and everything like that. So anyway, that's really all there is to it. It's pretty straightforward. So get yourself a ceramic honing rod like that, a really nice smooth one, and that way you'll be able to maintain your edge for a lot longer in between full sharpenings.